South Carolina, last chance for Biden to get moving and slow down the socialist Bernie. Hello, this is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button. Today we're going to be talking about the South Carolina Democratic primary. This is former Vice President Joe Biden's last chance, I think, to get back into the 2020 race. If he can stem socialist Bernie Sanders' momentum in South Carolina, I think it'll send a Democratic contest into chaos. It'll probably benefit President Donald Trump because it'll show that Democrats are not really sure who they want the nominee to be, whereas Sanders is leading nationally right now amongst Democrats by about 10 points. If you look at the latest average of polls from RealClear Politics in the 2020 contest, Bernie Sanders, he's beating Joe Biden by about 10 points. Now, Joe Biden in South Carolina, though, he could be up by as much as 20 points. So you could be seeing a little bit of people who are nervous about a Bernie Sanders nomination voting for Joe Biden in South Carolina because it looks like he's the only person who could beat Sanders down there. So we're going to take a look at that. Is this Biden about to stage a comeback? Possibly. Former Vice President Joe Biden, he's never won a presidential primary in his entire career. He's been running for president for 32 years. He ran in 88 and also in 2008 before he became Barack Obama's running mate in 2008. But he promptly withdrew from both of those races at the top of the ticket because he failed to gain any traction. Again, he's never won a primary before, but that could all change on February 29 in South Carolina if the latest polls in the primary to be believed, where Biden is up, he's way up. I don't think Biden's ever been losing one of these polls in South Carolina for the entire contest. So Biden has been consistently leading South Carolina by 10 or 20 points. There was one poll that showed Biden and Sanders tied, and that was about just 10 days ago, 12 days ago, 2020, Biden, Sanders tied for poll in first place. But this is the only poll, this Change Research for the Democratic group, the Welcome Party, shows Biden and Sanders knotted at 23% support. So most of the polls show Biden up, so Biden's probably the favorite to win the South Carolina primary. It would be a huge upset. I think it would knock Biden out of the race. If he loses South Carolina, he's finished because there won't be any momentum headed into next week's Super Tuesday contest. But I think Biden's got his work cut out for him, even if he does win South Carolina. But that said, it looks like he might win down there. And Biden's resilience in South Carolina may in part be explained by internal party opposition to Sanders' socialism and a dread that he cannot possibly beat President Donald Trump in a general election if he's going to go around saying he's a democratic socialist. That's going to turn off a lot of voters, particularly older voters who remember the Cold War. They remember the communist era in the Soviet Union, as well as Eastern Europe. They remember the failures in Cuba and, in a modern sense, in Venezuela as well. And I think it's just going to have a very negative impact upon Bernie Sanders' general election prospects if Democrats have to be defending socialism. It may normalize socialism for a generation. In the long term, if you're a socialist, you're excited about a Bernie nomination, whether he wins or loses, because it could create momentum in future election cycles for a socialist candidate. Because they'll say, well, we've already done it once, why not again? Maybe next time will be different, it'll be better, we'll do well. But leaving that aside, I think in immediate sense, it's a catastrophe for Democrats to have Bernie at the top of the ticket. And so the old guard, the Democratic establishment, they're saying, well, we'll back Joe Biden in South Carolina. But it's so close to Super Tuesday. Does Joe Biden have any momentum to carry him into Super Tuesday coming out of South Carolina? If you look at states like California, Bernie Sanders has consistently been up in this state, and I think he's going to do really, really well. And he's been kind of trading with Biden and Warren, but in recent polls, the past month, Bernie Sanders has been doing unbelievably well in the California primary. If he wins California, he's going to be in a commanding position, whether or not Joe Biden wins South Carolina. Joe Biden seems to only have regional support, maybe in the South. He could be a South-only candidate. He's up by 18 points in Georgia. In Texas, That could go, or North Carolina. He's up. He's kind of trading with it's really close in North Carolina. Biden and Sanders. Biden was way up, so it could be that if he does well in South Carolina, that he'll then do well in North Carolina. But he's been trading with Sanders. It's pretty close there. In Texas, kind of the same story. Where now both Biden and Sanders are, 23-20, 20-20, 24 to 20. And this could show you they have a two-way race then emerging, or a three-way race between Buttigieg, Sanders, and Biden coming out of Super Tuesday. But in order for that to happen, I think South Carolina has to go to Joe Biden, and then this race could drag on for months and months. And it wouldn't be the first time the Democratic frontrunner has faltered after early wins. And an unexpected candidate actually ended up getting the nomination. That could be Joe Biden this time. Bill Clinton in 92, George McGovern in 72, both managed to mount comebacks after showing in second place. Biden, though, he came in fifth place in New Hampshire and fourth place in Iowa. And again, he may only be a regional candidate. We'll see. And it may all be in vain, but with perhaps not enough time. So even if Biden wins South Carolina, it might not be enough time to stop Bernie on Super Tuesday and winning really big states. The result, though, might be big split in results state by state and multiple candidates who can claim to have a viable path to the nomination. And so nobody drops out of the race because, well, we got to try to stop Bernie. That could actually help Bernie in the long run. If nobody gets a clear majority of delegates headed into the convention, though, then the whole thing is chaos. This will go on for months and months right up until you get to Milwaukee. And all of which I think if Joe Biden was the presumptive frontrunner headed into Iowa, New Hampshire, and he completely collapsed right at the same time because Democrats were stupidly, in my opinion, pursuing impeachment with Ukraine and the Bidens as the centerpiece of impeachment. And all it did was call attention to Joe Biden's dealings with perhaps the most corrupt government in the world, Ukraine. We supported overthrowing the government in Ukraine in 2014 under Joe Biden and Barack Obama to get a trade deal between Ukraine and the European Union passed. They got the government overthrown. They got the trade deal passed, but not before a civil war started, not before the people of Crimea said, we're leaving Ukraine, we're joining Russia, and some eastern provinces as well. It caused a civil war. And then he's getting his son a job at Burisma Natural Gas. That was run by a Ukrainian oligarch under the Yanukovych administration that Biden helped to overthrow. So he ended up having his son work, I guess, for like the bad guys over there in Ukraine, the pro-Russian side. And this Burisma, which was accused of stealing from the Ukrainian treasury, the oligarch that ran Burisma was awarding natural gas contracts to himself. So there's a lot of corruption there, and Joe Biden had a lot to do with it. And I think that's why he has faltered. He lost Iowa, he lost New Hampshire, and now he's clinging on for dear life. He's got to win South Carolina. And I'll leave you with the close here. Suddenly, Biden's own weaknesses as a candidate were illustrated in devastating fashion, giving second life to candidates like Sanders, who appeared to be faltering. Now, weeks after impeachment, Bernie's in the lead, and Biden is on his last breath as a viable candidate with South Carolina on the line. If Biden loses South Carolina, his political career is over for all intents and purposes. The primary will tell the American people whether Democrats are finally uniting around the socialist Bernie Sanders or if they really have no idea who to nominate. Stay tuned. That's the commentary. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a good day.